So this week we talked about brain learning and implications for teaching and learning. So things that you highlighted were learning changes physical structure of the brain, structural changes alter functional organization of the brain. In other words, learning organizes and reorganizes the brain. Different parts of the brain may be ready to learn at different times. So the video's got to be short. So I'm gonna talk about the part that was most interesting to me, which was brain-based learning video by Glenda Hoffman. And so she approached education from the brain. And so when she was looking at special education, she came up with this rule called the 80-20 rule. 20% of students produce 80% of the problems. And special ed costs 2 to 3 times more than conventional education for a student that doesn't have any disabilities. So she thought, what causes these disabilities? And one thing she noticed or said was that problems begin before academics and problems show up later. Symptoms that a child may have are adequate intelligence outside the classroom but struggle inside the classroom. And she gave an example of this, learning problems unrelated to intelligence. She gave an example of a 8-year-old girl who scored 165 on an IQ test, but when she gave the child a page of pictures where she was supposed to draw, she couldn't do it. And that shows that there's something else going on. Like, she's perfectly smart, but she has trouble putting stuff on paper. So she limited her search to visual, auditory, and motor. And her study showed that students performed lowest on the tests that she gave for visual, auditory, and motor were also lowest in academic performance and lowest in processing skills. So her hypothesis for what was wrong was, is there a broken part of the brain? Is it insufficient or weak? Neural pathways and connections in the brain, which led to her talking about neuroplasticity, and exercises that improve brain's processing skills and allows the brain to become more organized and meaningful. So improving brain's processing skills leads to higher academic performance, improved memory, focus, and attention. It's not a silver bullet, and how do you work on that? So she gave examples of some things that you might do for to enhance these abilities, which the first one was visual, see and do. It allows them to build some self-confidence, and as you go on, tasks become more complicated. Auditory, hear and do, which test memory, and then you can add distractions, duration in between whenever they hear something and they have to do it or repeat it. And then motor skills, which are like a speed ladder or walking across a balance beam. Or she actually studied high school football players and their balance test, and they weren't very good at first, but then they became better, and they came back to the students later, and their reading scores went up 15%. So it is correlated somehow on developing regions of the brain. So the main thing that I wanted to talk about was the implications on education. And whenever I heard that she was doing these tests, see and do, the visual aspect, one of my friends he's an Army sniper, Special Forces, and anyway, whenever he was going through boot camp, they did these things called chem games. So at the start of the day, they'd wake up, they'd do their bed and everything and all that, but the first task they had to do outside of their barracks was to go into a room, memorize everything that was in that room, color, location, everything, and then they'd have to write down on a note card a list of describing everything and also draw a picture of where everything was. And as he went through the training to become a sniper, the duration increased the time they had to remember that, and the things that they were given to remember were more and more complicated. They had drill, they'd do all their training, and then at the end of the day, they'd have to come back and do it. And what they were doing was they were building their memory, because the primary use for a sniper is actually recon, not long shots. It's recon, so they have to be able to remember long periods of things and in very high detail for recon. So I thought that was really interesting, and it correlates to learning because even the military is using this to teach.